My name is James Caldwell, and I've served as a forest ranger in the Monongah National Forest for the past 9 years. Folks often imagine the role as serene, strolling amid beautiful trees, guiding wayward hikers, or battling the occasional wildfire. Yet in these parts, the unusual can creep in, downright eerie at times. I chose this path after my father perished in a mining accident. For 3 generations, Caldwells toiled in those coal pits. But after the cave-in, I refused to descend again. The ridges drew me instead, luring me to the surface where the air flowed freely. My wife, Ruth, believes I do this work to rescue others since I failed to save him. She might be onto something. We have 2 young daughters, Emma and Lucy, and as I settle them into bed each evening, my mind drifts to the families I've guided back safely. It was the tail end of October when the report hit. I was mending a damaged fence along the edge of the cranberry wilderness when my radio buzzed. "James, you copy?" Dispatch again. "Go ahead, Marie. What's the situation?" "We've got a lost group in the upper ridges. 5 in total, parents and 3 children. They were spotted heading into the backcountry 2 days back." A familiar dread twisted in my gut. 48 hours was an eternity out there, particularly with the chill arriving sooner than usual. Nights had plunged to 20 degrees, and the kids were just 6 and 4 years old. My chest tightened. Emma's 6, Lucy's 4. Heading out now? The trek to the starting point wound through an hour of twisting highland paths. My colleague, Frank Morrison, had arrived ahead, stuffing his backpack. Frank's logged 2 decades on the job. Nothing surprises him anymore. Most search cases end with chilled, frightened wanderers emerging unscathed, though occasionally they vanish for good. Quote underscore 4, I queried, running through my equipment. Radio, medical supplies, a backup tent, provisions to last 3 days if things dragged on. Frank replied, eyes on his gear. I grimaced. Urban visitors rarely grasp how swiftly peril strikes in these wilds. The cranberry wilderness spanned 15 miles of untamed peaks, a place to get swallowed up indefinitely. No signs, no outposts. Frank's tone dropped low. "This feels off." "How so?" "Rangers located their vehicle yesterday. Keys inside, windows open, as if they'd paused briefly. Permit shows a 5-day stay." It didn't add up. No one abandons a car unsecured in isolation. Least of all with children aboard. We pressed into the woods as daylight faded. The woods carried an unnatural hush, oppressively still. Normally you'd catch birdsong, rustling critters, life stirring in the brush, yet silence reigned. Only our footsteps crunched over stones and our breaths cut the crisp upland air. "Frank, notice anything?" "Like what?" "Exactly. 0 sounds. No avian chatter, no bugs, nada." He halted, straining to hear. The quiet draped like a thick shroud. Even the breeze had died. "Wildlife hushes before bad weather," he offered, though doubt laced his words. We pushed on another couple of hours before stumbling upon their site. It caught me off guard. The shelter stood intact, pegs sunk firmly into the soil. A cookpot rested amid the fire's dead embers. I prodded it. The surface retained warmth. Frank grumbled. I crouched by the pit. Surface ash lay cool, but beneath lingered a glow, as if fresh flames had layered over smoldering remnants. quote underscore one, 8 underscore underscore circling the spot. Impressions marred the damp ground. Not boots, but massive ones, stretching 18 inches, tipped with apparent talons. The spacing defied logic. The maker must have towered 9 feet. Grizzly? Frank ventured, skepticism clear. I'd tracked bears aplenty. These didn't match. Too elongated, too slender, and no Bruin strides bipedally that far. The prints veered directly from the area, climbing toward derelict mine entrances. Then it pierced the air. A wail ricocheting through the gorge, shrill and frantic, unmistakably human. It reverberated from all directions, rebounding off cliffs and weaving through the timber. The eerie wail dragged on endlessly, far beyond what any person could endure. Frank and I exchanged a glance. In all my time patrolling these woods as a ranger, nothing like that has ever reached my ears, I muttered. It originated higher up the slope, Frank observed, gesturing at the shadowy row of timber looming overhead. We should report this immediately, I added, fumbling for my radio. Only crackling interference responded. I switched frequencies repeatedly. Zilch. Isolation gripped us entirely. The cry pierced the air once more, nearer now. And beneath its layers, I could have sworn there was another noise, like the sob of a young child. We departed the Petersons' site as twilight vanished completely. Those unnatural impressions stretched upward through dense woodland, and every fiber of my being screamed to abandon the pursuit. Yet atop that ridge, 3 youngsters could still be surviving. Frank flicked on his beam, scanning the path rhythmically. Underscore underscore, quote underscore, 23 underscore underscore. I directed my light onto a single mark. The soil compressed beneath it resembled hardened pavement. At the borders, traces of talons raking over boulders appeared, carving profound scratches into the rock. Underscore underscore quote underscore 24 underscore underscore I suggested. But even as the words escaped, I recognized their absurdity. We ascended for a full hour more. The trail remained unwavering, ignoring boulders or toppled trunks. It forged directly skyward, as if its maker scorned all barriers. Quote 25, I urged. He halted abruptly. Quote 26, quote 27. Faint murmurs carried from afar, actual people conversing in hushed tones. Optimism surged within me. Perhaps the Petersons were safe, merely disoriented. We crept in that direction, treading softly to stay silent. Nearing, I discerned phrases. Quote 28, quote 29, quote 30. The murmurs emanated from a cluster of evergreens roughly 50 yards distant. Frank and I advanced cautiously, grips tight on our lights. Quote 31, quote I announced. Quote 32, quote, silence fell instantly. Quote 33, quote, Frank chimed in. Quote 34, quote, we parted the fir boughs, chasing the echoes. Yet emerging into the open space ahead revealed emptiness, just barren woods and those baffling prints veering onward uphill. Frank breathed. We'd both perceived them vividly. Chill perspiration trickled along my spine, ignoring the icy chill. The dialogue had rung so distinctly, so lifelike, a mom soothing her little ones, a dad feigning courage. Let's keep searching, I proposed. They've probably shifted position. Yet inwardly, I grasped that a profound disturbance tainted this place. The deserted camp with its steaming meal, the prints defying any known beast, the echoes amid vacant trees. It all unraveled logic. We pressed on upward. The foliage thickened, and shadows closed in like a sentient force. Our beams felt feeble, devoured by the gloom. Then Frank misstepped. A yelp sounded from behind. I whirled to watch him tumble, his light cartwheeling into obscurity. He slammed down solidly and lay still. "Frank!" I dashed over. He was aware, but agony contorted his features. "Ankle's busted, I reckon," he wheezed. My light revealed the injury, his right foot ballooning, and any shift paled his complexion further. "Right, we're evacuating you now," I declared, grasping the radio anew. Mere hiss returned. We were stranded without aid. "Negative," Frank seized my wrist. "James, those youngsters, you caught their pleas. They're above us yet. I won't abandon you solo. You must. I'll hobble to the site, await the search dogs. But those little ones," his gaze lifted to the shrouded incline. "Time's against them. Here, take this. If danger strikes, blow it hard. I'll detect it and rally support." I aided his rise, then observed his pained retreat downhill, leaning on a snapped limb for support. With that, I pivoted and trailed the marks into the deepening wilds. Ascent brought escalating oddities. My compass whirled erratically, directions flipping constantly. My timepiece displayed impossible readings, and quietude intensified, as if the peak itself suspended respiration. A mile farther, I spotted Frank's dropped light on the earth. Retrieving it chilled me. The casing bore deep crumples, as from a vise of immense power, yet he'd trailed close. How had it outpaced us so? I swept both beams about and uncovered additional prints. However, these weren't the massive claw marks I'd tracked earlier. Instead, they were boot prints. Frank's. They veered off from the spot where he'd collapsed, but pointing the wrong way. Rather than descending toward the base camp, they climbed higher up the slope. That defied logic. Frank could hardly stand, and I'd seen him limp back down the trail myself. Unless somebody else had slipped on his footwear. The scream echoed once more, far nearer this time. It began as a deep human groan before climbing to a shrill tone that pierced my ears, and now I distinctly caught words woven in. "Help me!" It was Frank's voice. I bolted in that direction, plowing through thick brush and tripping over boulders. The footprints guided me to a tight gorge flanked by sheer cliffs. Down at the base, just catching the edge of my light, a figure stirred. "Frank. Is that you, Frank?" The form in the gully pivoted toward me. In the dim glow, I made out Frank's park ranger coat and his signature crimson knit hat. James. The tone was faint, ragged. "Help me. Something's off. I can't feel my legs." I began scrambling down the incline, gravel skittering beneath my boots. Yet as I drew near, an instinct halted me. The silhouette below matched the build and outfit perfectly, but its motions felt unnatural. The head swiveled excessively, nearly a full rotation to face me, and when my beam swept across its features, I realized it wasn't Frank. It was some other entity draped in his gear, an entity with glowing amber eyes that mirrored the light like a beast's, and jaws lined with fangs far too elongated and jagged. The creature mimicking Frank grinned and uttered in his timbre, "Come on down." "James, I'm in awful shape." I clawed my way back up the embankment as quickly as possible, stones lacerating my palms, oblivious to the racket I was creating. That horrifying call rang out again, indistinguishable from my colleagues. "Don't abandon me, James. Please, it's freezing." I crested the ravine's edge and fled. I sprinted harder than ever, barreling through the woodland without a clue of my path. The only certainty was that a presence in these hills could mimic voices, don human attire, impersonate people. And out in these shadowed thickets, it had snatched 3 youngsters. I pushed on until my chest seared and my limbs buckled. When I collapsed at last, heaving and trembling, I was in a modest glade encircled by gnarled oaks. Their trunks bore ragged tears and gashes, as if a beast with enormous talons had filed its talons there. The scars were recent. The culprit had lingered nearby not long ago. I attempted to orient myself, but the woods appeared altered. The canopy loomed higher and more contorted, with flickers darting amid the trunks. Despite the still air, my light seemed feeble, swallowed by the encroaching gloom. That's when the children's sobs reached me. They emanated from further within the trees, the wails of frightened, chilled youths summoning their folks. But after the horror in the gully, I no longer believed any noises. Still, I pressed on toward them. What other option existed? The weeping drew me to an ancient shaft, one of these forsaken coal pits pocking these ridges like wounds from gunfire. A timber arch framed the opening, though the planks had decayed and splintered. The sounds poured from the depths below. "Hello?" I shouted into the void. "Children, are you in there?" "I'm a forest ranger. Let me assist you. Mister, are you for real?" "Michael. You truly a ranger, sir?" "Yeah, name's James Caldwell." I flashed my insignia. "I'll pull you all out safe. Where are your parents at this moment?" It dragged them farther into the shaft. We caught their screams. Then silence fell. "They're gone for good, aren't they?" "I'm not sure," I admitted. "But I'll see you safely out of this place. It's returning," the smallest girl breathed. I switched off my light and drew the children behind rusted machinery from bygone days. In pitch black, we held our breath. The steps drew nearer. Accompanying them was a noise etched forever in my mind, a soft hum, akin to a lullaby being crooned. Yet the melody twisted oddly, with dissonant tones that grated on the soul. My beam swept across it as it breached the room. Towering over 12 feet, it was shrouded in rust-colored fur, tangled and clumped. Its limbs dangled excessively long, nearly brushing the floor, terminating in talons sharp as butcher blades. The face, though, that was the true horror. Vaguely humanoid but distorted and unnatural. Glowing amber eyes pierced the gloom, jaws lined with fangs resembling a predator fish's. And its speech? Utterly lifelike. "Michael, Sarah, Jenny, where have you gone, little ones?" "Mommy's waiting. No need to fear. Your father and I have searched high and low. Show yourselves. It's time to head home." Tiny Sarah edged forward, drawn by the call, until I seized her wrist and restrained her. The beast's gaze swung our way, nostrils widening as it sniffed us out. "James Caldwell," it intoned, the timbre shifting, profound, timeless now. "I sense you, Ranger. Your terror gives you away." It advanced, and I spotted skeletal remains littering the dirt near its paws. Human remnants, stripped bare. You never should have intruded, it went on. This peak is mine. These trails belong to me. And the young ones? They are under my claim. I fished out Frank's signal whistle and blasted it with all my might. The shrill blast stung even our ears. On the monster, though, it wrought chaos. It reeled away, slamming palms over its auditory slits, bellowing in agony. The cry boomed through the cavern like a storm. "Go now!" I urged the children. We lunged for the cord. I hoisted Michael first, followed by the sisters. Fear fueled their ascent, propelling them quicker than I'd imagined. Down below, the fiend regrouped. It tilted its head, those fiery orbs fixed on us, and mimicked Frank's timbre. Escape is impossible, James. Your colleague is in my grasp. You'll join him soon. Follow me. So? You reckon it was a bear mauling? That's the sole explanation that fits. I fabricated the response, yet we were both aware the account had glaring flaws. Bears never haul off victims without a trace of gore. Bears leave no such bizarre imprints as those we'd discovered. And bears sure as hell don't stalk prey inside forsaken shafts. What about your colleague, Morrison? That was the query I'd feared most. He hung back to scour the tunnel network. We lost touch via radio near midnight. It wasn't entirely false. Frank had indeed remained, though against his will. They dispatched a squad to retrieve him, 6 rangers equipped with hounds and gear. They located shreds of his shredded outfit strewn near the pit's mouth. But his remains were nowhere. The formal statement cited a bear assault, though I spotted the skepticism in their gazes. The Peterson kids were transported to the clinic for monitoring. Prior to departing, young Michael, just 8, approached my spot. "Mr. James," he murmured softly, "that creature's still lurking up there, right?" "Yeah, it is. It knew our names. It mimicked Mommy's tone flawlessly." "How could it?" "No idea, kid." "Will it come after us?" That query haunted my sleep for the following 3 evenings. Might it venture past its ridge boundaries? Could it pursue the youngsters to their residence in Richmond? Lacking responses terrified me beyond measure. 2 weeks on, I sat at the dining table attempting to draft my concluding account when Ruth discovered me. "You've barely rested, I'm okay." "You're not." Emma wondered yesterday why Daddy seems frightened constantly these days. What truly occurred up there, James? Ruth. These forests harbor entities not found in any wildlife guide. Your grandma shared legends of the ancient ridges, of presences predating the Cherokee. Predating all. She termed them the primal famished. You never mentioned that. I figured they were mere fables. I recognize in your stare what Grandma discerned in hers, the certainty that certain tales hold truth. Hello, James, I'd been expecting your return sooner or later. Every urge in my body screamed to bolt, yet an unseen force rooted me in place. Perhaps it stemmed from rage, or perhaps from a burning desire for answers. "What exactly are you?" I demanded. "I'm famished. Quote 95 ancient and isolated. Quote 96. Why resort to this? Quote 97. Because I'm able. Because these peaks have been my domain long before humans mastered flames. Because terror's flavor surpasses any flesh. That evening I could have claimed you," it went on. "You and the kids too, but what's the thrill in an easy grab? You'll retreat to your cozy existence now." and I'll haunt your thoughts whenever the breeze moans through the branches, whenever your girls frolic unsupervised in the garden, whenever your spouse summons you from afar. Keep clear of my loved ones. No need for me to seek them out, James. A piece of your soul stays trapped here forever. A fragment of you forever fleeing these shadowed thickets, eavesdropping on echoes from the departed. Pleasant slumber, Ranger. Steer clear of the uplands, particularly by the abandoned shafts, and should whispers summon you from the trees, ignore them regardless of the timbre. I spotted prints, matching yours precisely, near the Devil's Den caverns, mister. Caldwell? She inched closer. Children's voices reached me, giggling, at play. But upon checking, the woods stood vacant, merely stillness and those marks veering into the heights. Tom, you copy? Hello? Park Ranger here. Heard it all? Ma'am, if you're injured, respond, please. I'm equipped to assist. Then I spotted the tracks. They stood out sharply in the mud. Delicate women's prints from shoes with an odd silhouette. No rugged boots or casual kicks like typical hikers wear on these paths. Instead, they resembled vintage heels from some bygone-era film, complete with an unfamiliar design. I pursued the trail farther into the brush, my beam revealing extra clues. Whoever this woman was, she'd pressed on in a direct path through obstacles that would have halted most folks. Barbed thickets ready to shred fabric and flesh, toppled trunks demanding detours. Tangled foliage I had to shove aside with my arms, yet the prints marched onward in an unwavering line, unimpeded. The sobs intensified as I trailed them, gut-wrenching, frantic wails that constricted my throat. It evoked the anguish of those parents at the clinic post-blaze, bereft of their young ones. That piercing lament that risks shattering your resolve if you let it. 10 minutes of battling through the woods later, I emerged into a tiny glade I'd never encountered. Bizarre, I'd roamed these ridges for years, convinced I knew the terrain inside out. At its heart lay churned soil, newly turned as if from recent digging. No upkeep crews were slated here, let alone any digging ops. I dropped to one knee, directing my light at the mound. Scattered amid the earth were misplaced items, aged metal scraps, corroded buttons, and what appeared to be bone shards. My medic background surged forward. I'd studied plenty of skeletons in school to ID human relics on sight. These were weathered, tinged yellow from time, but unequivocally from a person. I rose fast, thoughts churning. This might range from an ancient grave to foul play. I had to retreat to the vehicle and summon support. Abruptly, the crying ceased, replaced by a voice. Where is he? Where's my boy? __quote _114 __. Who's speaking? I croaked. I can't find him. I've searched all over. Where's my boy? Ma'am, I don't spot you. Need medical aid? He returned from the war. Ma'am, everything okay? I murmured, my words barely audible. She pivoted to face me, revealing her visage in sharp relief for the first moment. Empty voids stared back where eyes should have been, abysses plunging endlessly, akin to peering down ancient shafts. Her lips parted in speech, yet her countenance felt distorted, as if portions had been crudely scrubbed away. Aid me in locating him, she uttered. Aid me in finding my boy. At that instant, my flashlight gave out entirely, plunging me into pitch blackness alongside an entity that defied all reason. I bolted. I reached my patrol vehicle quicker than ever, barreling through thickets and tripping on unseen roots. My fingers trembled on the key as I fought to ignite the motor. Zilch. The entire vehicle lay inert. No illumination, no static on the comms. No spark from the starter. It was as though every circuit had been sapped dry. I hunkered in the shadows, forcing steady breaths. Years of bedside care had drilled composure into me during emergencies. Yet this defied every principle of reality I held. An eternity seemed to pass before the ignition caught. The receiver hissed to life, and my gauges flickered on. I sped away from there, though I realized a return was inevitable. Those woods harbored a link to the skeletal remains, and lives might hang in the balance. Come dawn, I headed to the ranger station, spotting Tom Bradley there ahead of me, mug in hand and brows furrowed in concern. "Rough night?" he inquired. I recounted the tracks, the open glade, and the relics. I omitted the spectral figure in ivory. Tom valued logic, and I had to keep my account grounded to secure assistance. "Skeletons, eh?" He rubbed his chin through the stubble. "Not unusual around here." Civil War relics surface periodically, especially post-storms eroding the ground. Ever catch wind of tales about a weeping lady? Folklore from the locals? Hauntings? Tom's demeanor shifted. He set aside his brew and fixed me with a grave stare. "Patricia, these ridges hold echoes from ages past. Elders spoke of Sarah Whitmore, a resident from the 1860s whose boy marched off with the Graycoats. Legend claims he staggered back injured and perished amid these trees. She roamed nightly in search for years, succumbing to sorrow in the end. Folklore, surely. Perhaps. Still, wardens have noted odd occurrences here for generations. Chills in the air, gear malfunctions, whispers among the pines. Most keep quiet to avoid seeming unhinged. The afternoon saw me buried in archives. The preserve's files dated to its 1935 founding, and Sarah Whitmore cropped up in multiple entries. She existed indeed, widowed early in the conflict. Her sole child returned maimed from an unlisted skirmish. Accounts noted her scouring the peaks for months until discovery deceased by Old Rag Mountain in 1863. The verdict? Hypothermia and fatigue. Other notes unsettled me further. Onlookers reported her traversing that very zone dusk after dusk, summoning her child, long past when frailty should have confined her. That night, I ventured again to Liberlos Trail. I'd packed spare power cells, redundant comms gear, and a recorder. Madness or not, proof was essential either way. The chill descended once more, precisely where it had the prior evening. My exhalations fogged the chill, and the woods hushed, yet now I anticipated it. I traced the prints anew, arriving at the familiar glade. This time the soil revealed additional fragments, shards of cloth, fasteners, and trinkets strewn about. "Sarah," I ventured aloud. "Sarah Whitmore." The sobs erupted at once, nearer now. "I understand you're seeking your child. Let me assist. You perceive me. Indeed, I do. Share about your son, James." James Whitmore was his name. He limped back from the fray with a gash in his flank, hemorrhaging within. I tended him as best I could, but his strength ebbed. By one dawn, he'd vanished. Utterly. "My search endures unbroken." While she talked, it started to sink in for me. This went far beyond a simple tale of the supernatural. It was the unyielding devotion of a parent who had rejected the finality of death, persisting into the afterlife itself. Sarah, just how much time have you spent searching? Days? Months? Time slips away from me, but I'll locate him eventually. A parent always tracks down their little one. She had no clue that she had passed on, no grasp that well over 100 years had elapsed. That's the moment it hit me. A profound heaviness of sorrow pressing in from beyond my own thoughts. Flashes of scenes burst into my head. A youthful fighter staggering through shadowy forests, wounded and leaking life, crying out for his mom. The lad tumbling down by a secluded cavern entrance, his mom scouring the area in desperation, fading bit by bit until her own end came. All while shouting his name. The torrent of feelings was too much to bear. I experienced every instant of Sarah's anguish, every sleepless night of pursuit, every sunrise yielding nothing. It resembled being submerged in another's despair. Yet even more painful, that sorrow stirred up my personal recollections. The kids from the hospital blaze rushed back, the ones I failed to rescue in the nick of time, the ones who wailed for their moms amid the choking fumes. I dropped to my knees right there in the open space, tears streaming down my face without restraint. Sarah's pain had zeroed in on the fracture in my soul and forced it apart. "You get it," Sarah murmured, drawing nearer. "You felt the agony of their absence." I made myself raise my eyes to meet hers. "Sarah, there's something crucial I have to share about James, about his possible whereabouts." But right as I tried to go on, my sight hazed over, revealing another sight. A cavern mouth, obscured by tumbled stones and tangled foliage. Within, the bones of a young fighter, clad in fragments of his old Confederate garb. The image was vivid enough that I pinpointed the spot precisely. The cavern matched the apparition exactly, roughly half a mile northward from the open area, tucked behind what seemed like a casual landslide of boulders. In broad daylight, anyone would stroll by without noticing. Yet Sarah's recollections steered me true, revealing how rubble had half buried the entryway. I returned at dawn the following day, geared up for spelunking. Cords, a lighted helmet, and survival supplies. If James Whitmore's bones were truly inside, I had a duty to him and his mom to manage it with care. The gap was scarcely broad enough for a single body to squeeze inside. Deeper in, it widened to a chamber the scale of a modest space. My lamp illuminated signs that matched the mental picture. Skeletal remains rested against the opposite side, draped in the decayed scraps of a Confederate outfit. Close by, a dampened leather sack held documents that had endured the years. As I gingerly unsealed it, a note emerged, scripted to my beloved mother in ink grown faint. The writing trailed off unfinished. It recounted James's injury, his fight to return home, and his conviction that the end was near. The final words stated, "Inform Mother I fought to reach her. Tell her I..." And there it stopped. I lingered in that cavern for what felt like ages, reflecting on Sarah Whitmore's endless hunt across these peaks for more than a century, fueled by an affection that denied any parting, pondering my own struggle to release the young lives I'd been unable to protect. That evening, I revisited the open space with an idea in mind. Sarah materialized the instant I uttered her name, though now she seemed altered, more tangible, more vivid. Her sorrow was transforming her, boosting her strength in peril. "I know James's location," I informed her. "Where?" The reply erupted like a shriek. "I've discovered his form, Sarah. He's been gone since 1863, the same year you left this world." The air in the space turned icy cold. Ice crystals started to creep across the surrounding trunks. No, I haven't died. I'm seeking my boy. I'm watching over him. Sarah, examine yourself. Look at your limbs." She lifted her arms. And under my light's glow, we both gazed right through them to the woodland beyond. You perished while hunting for him. The two of you are gone, but you refuse to release him. The cry that escaped her was otherworldly. It echoed 100 years of suppressed mourning, shattering at last. The nearby trees started to sway backward from the area, and that smothering sorrow returned, fiercer now. This was her essence. She drew energy from mourning, from rejecting the pain of separation. And it dawned on me why she had chosen to reveal herself to me. I bore my unhealed wounds of loss, and they had drawn her near. You must release him, Sarah. You must release yourself. I can't. A parent never forsakes their young. You're not forsaking him. You're setting him free. The wave of emotion surged harder. I caught glimpses of every sufferer I'd lost, every youngster who slipped away despite my efforts. Sarah was turning my remorse into a weapon, aiming to chain me to her timeless quest. But in my time as a caregiver and a forest warden, I'd come to know one truth. At times, the deepest expression of caring is to release. Sarah, hear me out. I'm going to carry James to you. His body, his earthly remains. You can bid him farewell as it should be. The cries ceased. Really, you'd handle that? Absolutely. But once it's done, you two have to let go and move forward. What you're holding on to isn't love any longer. Sarah, it's suffering that's chaining you down. It required 3 careful journeys for me to carry James's remains from the cavern out to the open space. I'd reached out to Tom and the park's historian, organizing a dignified interment in the cemetery there, complete with plaques honoring both the mother and her child. Before that, though, I had one final encounter with Sarah Whitmore. I laid out the bones with reverence in the glade and retreated a few steps. She materialized right away, her form more tangible than ever before. She simply gazed for an instant. Then she dropped to her knees by the skeleton, and I observed her ethereal fingers appear to caress her son's cranium. "My child," she murmured. "My suffering boy. You've endured solitude for so much time. He won't be isolated any longer," I assured her. "And you won't either." Sarah lifted her eyes to mine, and peace shone in those empty orbits for the very first time. "Thank you," she uttered. "Thank you for returning him to me." The glade bathed in radiance, not from my lantern, but from an unseen source. A soft amber glow that turned the March evening into something balmy like midsummer. Within that glow, James Whitmore emerged as he'd been alive, a vigorous youth in his 20s, intact and vital, approaching his mother. "Forgive my delay in coming back, Mom," he spoke. Sarah rose and wrapped him in her arms. Briefly, they both took on substance. Both felt authentic. Both gained release. "I love you," she told him. "I love you as well. But it's time for us to depart now." They faced me together, and Sarah offered a smile, the first without torment etched on her features. "Look after yourself, Patricia," she advised, "and release your guilt. Those kids you couldn't save. That wasn't on you. There are times when folks pass away no matter how hard we try. Sometimes, loving truly involves coming to terms with that." The brilliance intensified, and then they vanished. The official service occurred 3 days afterward. Tom Bradley, along with the park historian and me, conducted a modest rite at the cemetery. We laid the two collections of remains side by side beneath one stone inscribed with Sarah Whitmore, 1823 to 1863, and James Whitmore, 1841 to 1863, reunited at last. The weeping ended from then on. Reports of a lady in white haunting Liberlos Trail faded away. The sudden chills and gadget malfunctions in the vicinity stopped too. The woods reclaimed their usual rhythm. Yet I remained altered. Crossing paths with Sarah Whitmore shifted something deep inside me. She illustrated how unyielding sorrow can forge its own cage. Hers had persisted more than 100 years. Mine had gripped me for 6, yet it cut just as sharply. I began opening up to a local therapist about the blaze at the hospital. An expert in what we term post-traumatic stress today. Voicing aloud that I wasn't able to rescue every soul, that certain bereavements lie outside our grasp. It brought relief. Half a year on, I requested a shift to the park's guest relations team. I yearned to assist folks once more, though through another lens. The park launched support sessions for relatives grieving hiking mishaps or similar misfortunes. It turned out there was real demand for expertise in both sorrow and recovery. I still patrol the ridges occasionally, but never solo these days. And when fresh rangers mention odd occurrences, whispers among the trees, baffling chills, gear glitches, I urge them to treat each one with gravity. You can't predict when aid might be urgently needed, whether from the quick or the departed. The peaks guard their enigmas, yet they honor their vows too. Sarah Whitmore reclaimed her son. I rediscovered my serenity. And amid Shenandoah's hollows, two wandering spirits adrift for ages, at last navigated toward sanctuary. On quiet nights, amid the ranger outpost's files, I swear I catch the faint resonance of that amber warmth. It serves as a nudge that affection outlasts mortality, though genuine bonds occasionally demand release. That's the insight Sarah Whitmore imparted to me amid Virginia's highlands that spring of 1975, revealing how aiding the departed can guide the quick toward proper mourning. My name is Luther McGrady, and I've served as a ranger in the Great Smoky Mountains for 22 years. I've witnessed bear maulings, idiotic visitors, and more corpses than I'd like to recall. But none of it braced me for the events in Moonshine Hollow come that August. Folks often wonder why I traded bootlegging through these trails in my wilder days for ranger duty. Honestly, the ridges won't release you. Once they've seeped into your veins, you're bound. My father hauled liquor, and his before him. When I crossed paths with my Sarah, she forced the pick, the jug or her. No real contest. That was in 35. Sarah passed from cancer 3 years back. These days, it's me and Bobby, my 17-year-old son, who fancies chasing my old path. I warn him there are smarter livelihoods out there, but the peaks summon the McGrady lineage unyieldingly. That sweltering day, when everything kicked off, felt like the gates of hell had swung wide open. August in the Smokies has a way of baking you to a crisp, yet this heat carried an eerie edge. The birds had gone silent, and looking back, that silence ought to have tipped me off. I was sorting through my equipment at the ranger station when the radio crackled to life with Sheriff Davies on the line. 3 hikers from Atlanta had vanished near Cataract Falls, overdue by a couple of days now. Their vehicle sat abandoned at the trailhead, packed with a cooler of flat, sun-warmed beer and sandwiches, turning rancid under the blaze. "Luther, get yourself up there," Davies urged through the static. "Nobody knows those woods like you do." He wasn't wrong. I'd smuggled moonshine along every ravine and stream in that stretch, mapping out every path, cavern, and hideaway where a fellow could stash a still or vanish without a trace. The terrain around Cataract Falls was deceptive, riddled with relics from long-ago bootlegging days, some dating clear back to my grandfather's era. I stuffed my backpack with the essentials: canteen, medical supplies, some sturdy rope, and my trusty .30A6 rifle. Out here in the hills, trouble could lurk anywhere. Black bears roamed plenty, but lately we'd gotten word of feral hogs drifting over from Tennessee, vicious beasts that could rip a person to shreds. The trek to the falls usually clocked in at 2 hours, and I was pushing a solid pace. Still, the humidity was brutal, leaving my shirt plastered to my skin by the time I arrived. The cascade was barely a whisper, dribbling feebly over the stones, drier than I'd witnessed in years. That's when the first hint of trouble caught my eye. An abandoned distillery lay roughly a quarter-mile from the falls, its stone base weathered but intact since Prohibition wrapped up. I'd inspected the spot countless times, ensuring no fool tried reviving the trade. What greeted me there sent ice through my veins. The place wasn't merely dismantled, it was obliterated. Leftover copper tubing lay contorted into bizarre forms, as if superheated and warped by naked fists. But the real kicker was the temperature. Even under the canopy of ancient oaks, the vicinity shimmered with a sweltering haze that left me lightheaded. My compass went haywire, its needle whirling wildly. When I brushed the barrel of my rifle, it scorched my fingers, forcing me to yank away with a sharp oath. The surrounding foliage looked off, too, leaves withered and scorched, trunks charred as if scorched by flames. Yet no blaze had raged, no soot, no acrid tang in the air, only unrelenting warmth, shriveled greenery, and metal mangled in ways that twisted my gut to behold. I keyed the radio to report, but only white noise answered. Then came the first remnant of those lost souls. A belt buckle fused into a droplet form. Beside it, 3 bones seared to ebony. I knew I should have turned tail immediately, summoned reinforcements, bolted from that cursed draw. Duty pulled me forward, though, and out there, lives might still hang in the balance. I pressed on along what seemed like a path, trampled weeds and snapped limbs, perhaps left by frantic escapees crashing blindly through the underbrush. With each stride, the atmosphere grew more oppressive, denser, like breathing soup. My grandfather spun yarns about this stretch, dubbing it haunted soil that the Cherokee wisely shunned. He spoke of an infernal spirit buried in the depths, surfacing amid waves of avarice and brutality. I dismissed it as rustic folklore, the sort elders shared to corral restless young ones. Doubt gnawed at me now. The noise struck without mercy, a grating metallic wail echoing from all directions, like nails raking slate. It rattled my molars and chilled me to the core, heat be damned. Then the stench rolled in, heavy sulfur, cloying and suffocating, laced with the reek of scorched flesh. About 50 yards farther, in a small glade, I stumbled on the second victim, or his remains. He leaned against a trunk, almost serene in repose, save for his boots liquefied around his ankles and his camera reduced to a deformed blob dangling from his strap. The tree at his back stood withered and scorched, its hide split and weeping a dim, crimson resin. Strangely, the fellow bore no fire damage, not a blister or char. He simply rested there, lids shut, as if dozing off for good. I felt for a heartbeat, certain there'd be none. His flesh felt icy amid the surrounding inferno. Grazing his arm reduced his shirt to dust. That's when the footfalls echoed, ponderous, methodical thuds parting the timber. Far too weighty for any person, too rhythmic for wildlife. I snatched up my rifle, straining to zero in on the source, but waves of heat warped the view into a hazy illusion. Peering through the branches, I spied an abomination that defied reason. Towering at least 8 feet. Humanoid in outline, but fundamentally warped. Flames licked and swirled about it like an extension of its form, consuming nothing yet bound to it inescapably. Its gaze burned like embers in a forge, and as it shifted, waves of scorching air warped the space nearby. The fire devil straight out of my grandfather's old tales. It noticed me staring and grinned wide. That grin sent the heat spiking another 20 degrees in an instant. My rifle's barrel heated to a bright orange glow, forcing me to let go before it seared my palms. The creature let out a laugh like shattering iron, then melted away into the forest shadows. I bolted, smashing through the underbrush and tripping on roots, oblivious to the racket I caused. All that mattered was fleeing that open spot, escaping the blistering warmth, the acrid sulfur stench, and the haunting image of those crimson eyes. I'd barely covered 100 yards when my foot caught on something yielding. The third missing hiker turned out to be a young woman, around 25. She was breathing, but just hanging on to awareness, murmuring about flames and iron, and some demon lurking in the trees. Her pack and clothes were warped and fused by fire, yet her skin showed no burns. I hoisted her up and supported her weight as we headed toward the trail out. She rambled on, her words jumbled, but they chilled me to the bone. "It's building something," she murmured, way down in the earth's depths, crafting it from the scrap metal, the bitterness and fury of those long-gone times. It's nearly complete. We staggered into the ranger station right at dusk. Medics rushed her to the hospital, where the docs found only fatigue and thirst as issues. She clammed up about the incident, fixating on the blank wall and flinching at every clatter of metal objects. I ought to have dropped it right there, sealed off the zone as hazardous and kept my distance. But with bodies turning up and some force in the woods claiming lives, I couldn't walk away. Deep down, I knew it had more in store. 2 days on, the Fed arrived. Patterson from the ATF, probing tips of bootleg booze setups in the National Forest. Slick urban type, the sort who'd never truly conquered a ridge. "Ranger McGrady," he greeted, clasping my hand in an overeager squeeze. "Word is you've spotted signs of moonshine brewing near Cataract Falls. Underscore underscore, quote underscore 141 underscore underscore. We're chasing a big ring hidden in these peaks. This might crack it wide open. I pushed back, warning of risks, perhaps some toxic runoff in the vicinity. But suits from D.C. rarely heed advice from backwoods rangers with a history in the shine trade. We headed out at dawn. I packed spare canteens and my spare rifle, a sturdy bolt action that could take the warmth better. Patterson lugged a full kit for a week-long trek, plus a sidearm that screamed unused. The climb felt grimmer this round. The swelter hit us hard even a mile from the falls. When we got to the ruined still, he was flushed and soaked through. "Christ," he muttered, eyeing the contorted wreckage. "What kind of force wrecks metal that bad?" I opened my mouth to reply as that eerie metallic wail pierced the air, sharper now, echoing from farther in. But this time, it carried another layer, a steady clang, like a smith striking iron. "Folks are laboring in there," Patterson noted, drawing his weapon. "Let's move. Quote 146 ATF. You're under arrest." The fire devil glanced over and bared its teeth in a leer. Heat surged wildly, turning the agent's barrel to a molten glow. He let out a horrific yell and let the pistol fall, grabbing at his scorched palm. The beast chuckled darkly before returning to its task. Yet it kept its gaze locked on us, those fiery red eyes fixed steadily on our expressions, while it pounded relentlessly on that unnatural blade. "Get out of here!" I hissed to Patterson. We barely got any distance before the fire devil wrapped up its creation and pursued us. It didn't sprint, just advanced with those deliberate, weighty strides. But with each footfall, the earth split open behind it, radiating an eerie glow. As it moved past, trees erupted in blazes. Even the atmosphere ignited. Patterson tripped and collapsed. When I spun around to aid him, the reason became clear. His badge had liquefied. The searing metal had seared straight through his clothing and into his torso. He was gone the instant he struck the dirt, his features locked in a mask of stunned agony. I bolted onward until my legs gave out, then ducked into a cavern from my bootlegging past. I stayed put as the sun dipped low and the oppressive warmth eased from the breeze. Upon reaching the ranger outpost at last, I reported Patterson's passing as a simple trail mishap. No sense attempting to recount the real events. Still, my mind replayed that blade the fire devil had forged, along with the tales my granddaddy shared about ancient grudges, the bloodshed and avarice that had drenched these ridges in cruelty. That demon was gearing up for trouble, and deep down, I suspected the nature of it. Over 3 days, I pored through the local archives, sifting ancient papers and Cherokee archives. The discoveries left my fingers trembling. In 1922, Moonshine Hollow had erupted in conflict. Rival clans battling for control and trade routes, slaughtering one another over distillation gear and fermented grain. The McCready Bunch, the Hutchkins crew, and the Cherokee, who'd distilled spirits in those peaks since time immemorial. The strife concluded when grizzled Ezra McCready torched a distillery containing 2 Cherokee siblings. In his final moments, one, a shaman called Joseph Crow Feather, invoked a hex on the valley. He claimed to summon an entity from the underworld, one that would exact retribution on avarice and brutality anywhere it emerged. The murders halted then, but not from newfound wisdom. They ceased because an unseen hunter began stalking them amid the timber. 7 victims perished in the following month, each discovered charred yet unmarred by flames. The rest scattered. And Moonshine Hollow lay abandoned for 2 decades, until recently. I tracked down Joseph Crow Feather's great-grandson at a fuel stop on the reserve. An elder by the name of Thomas, around 70, his palms etched with marks from decades crafting iron. My ancestors' kin was misguided, quote 149, quote, believed he could harness the fire devil, wield it for his folks' vengeance. But such fiends heed no fairness. They crave only sustenance. He shared the full account, how Joseph Crow Feather employed ancient ceremonies to rouse a force from the soil, a being that thrived on fury and malice, how it had swelled with power from each fatality, each surge of covetousness and wrath across the range. It slumbered, underscore, quote, underscore 151, underscore, biding time, until sufficient rage and slaughter roused it once more. That government man of yours, the vanished trekkers, they intruded on its slumber. Now it hungers. Return to the depths and rest. This won't be simple, he cautioned. The demon will resist, and you may not make it through. I recognized the truth in his words. Yet I also realized I couldn't unleash that horror upon the land. Countless lives hung in the balance. That evening I returned to Moonshine Hollow. Lugging my grandpa's vintage lamp and a satchel brimming with the holy water and consecrated soil. The Inferno's blaze struck midway, and by the forge site, inhaling felt like swallowing flames. The fire devil awaited me. It had completed the sword, a gleaming construct of solidified blaze, both mesmerizing and horrifying. Spotting me, it lifted the edge and cackled. Here to perish like the rest? It rasped, its tone scorching like liquid steel. Here to stoke the blaze. I stayed silent, instead beginning to scatter the blessed water in a ring encircling the forge. Wherever the liquid met the soil, vapor billowed, dimming the crimson light. The fire devil growled and lunged with its otherworldly edge. I dodged and continued the dousing, hurrying to seal the loop before it intervened. The sword whistled past, mere inches away, slicing the wind with a wail like torment. Where it struck the ground, stone fractured and oozed lava. I managed 3/4 of the perimeter when the devil seized me. Its grip clamped my neck, scorching through fabric and flesh. The torment surpassed any I'd known. Yet I clung to the water and poured on. You can't halt what's already been set in motion, the fire devil rasped. The ground holds on to the brutality and the avarice. It sustains me, builds my power. Yet I recalled something myself. Lessons from my Cherokee companions about these peaks. They weren't merely stone and dirt. Water formed them as well, ancient springs flowing clear from the dawn of creation. With my other hand, I seized the consecrated clay and rubbed it across the devil's limb. It shrieked and released its grip, though the harm lingered. That contact had seared right through to my skeleton. Drawing on my final reserves, I finished drawing the ring and uttered the Cherokee phrases Thomas had shared with me. The result hit right away. The holy water lit up with a pure, soothing radiance. The fire devil's forge began collapsing, its bizarre iron forms dissolving into the soil. The beast was transforming as well, its blaze flickering like flames caught in a breeze. "This isn't finished," it growled. "Atrocity summons atrocity. Avarice draws more avarice. I'll come back once the land is primed to nourish me anew." But it was vanishing, retreating into the fissures below. The oppressive warmth eased off, giving way to the crisp highland breeze from my early years. I slumped beside the fading blazes, clutching my scorched limb to my body. The agony was unbearable. Yet I survived, and the fire devil had retreated for the moment. They helicoptered me out to the Knoxville Medical Center. Third-degree burns across my limb and torso, lung damage from the fumes. Extreme fluid loss. The physicians called it a miracle I pulled through. Those 6 weeks confined to the bed gave me time to ponder the events in Moonshine Hollow, the cost of brutality and selfishness, and the entities lurking in the earth's hidden depths, eager for us to stir them. My son Bobby stopped by daily, hauling in novels and periodicals, sharing his dreams of university over a ranger's path. Wise boy. Perhaps the McGradys could escape these ridges at last. Upon discharge, I learned the park authorities had sealed off the Cataract Falls zone as untouched wildland. No tents, no trails, nothing metallic permitted. Officially, it safeguarded rare wildlife. But I understood the real reason. Thomas Crow Feather joined me for a purification rite at the Hollow's gateway. We sanctified the edges, imploring the ridge guardians to stand vigil. It wouldn't contain the fire devil eternally, but it could lull it for a generation or so more. That autumn, I left the Ranger Force. My dominant arm was too impaired for duty, and the night terrors disrupted my rest. I took a job at the local supply shop, showing urban visitors the ways of hill country endurance. Still, on sweltering late summer evenings when the atmosphere hangs thick and motionless, I head to the hollow's brink and strain my ears, just to confirm the silence persists in those buried realms. I've grasped the reality. The fire devil spoke true on one point. Brutality begets brutality. Selfishness breeds more. These highlands have witnessed ample shares across the decades. The fiend slumbers presently, but it endures, poised for the instant when greed, rage, or savagery rouses it once more. And that moment will arrive. It's baked into who we are. So somebody must descend into Moonshine Hollow to soothe it back to rest. I only pray it spares my son, Bobby. I'm Luther McGrady, and I've beheld the fire devil firsthand. Its scorching grasp marked me. Its voice rang like heated steel. I recognize what hides in these summits' profound shadows, and it hasn't finished with humanity. Far from it. I'm Marcus Flintridge, a park ranger with 11 years under my belt. I've watched grizzlies shred tent sites, pursued illegal hunters amid fierce gales, and fished corpses from gullies that'd churn your gut. But no part of my preparation touched the horror that unfolded in November 1984, buried in Virginia's Jefferson National Forest. At 33, I patrolled solo around Mount Pleasant. Funding shortages left me without support for miles. Just my transmitter amid terrain, choked with rhododendron dense enough to conceal a full-sized bus. The highlands served as my workplace, and I could navigate each crest, stream, and animal path with eyes closed. That November felt mild for the elevation. Foliage had dropped, yet daytime warmth lingered from warmer months. With deer hunting underway, my days filled with verifying permits and ensuring sportsmen avoided does with young. It was straightforward, vital labor, though the paycheck barely covered basics post-split. The report hit on a Tuesday as I inspected bear snares. Livestock slayings plagued the lowland spreads, leaving ranchers on edge. The county lawman suspected a marauding Bruin, perhaps one grown bold around people. That could occur when visitors tossed scraps, twisting feral beasts into scavengers. As winter arrived and the easy meals dried up, those creatures would turn ravenous. Flintridge, you reading me? The radio burst into static while I crouched by some prints along Jennings Creek. Dispatch, what's up? We've got reports of fresh livestock loss. Henderson's place, roughly 3 miles southeast of you. The sheriff's asking you to check it out. I let out a heavy breath and hoisted my backpack. Henderson was a decent fellow, managing a modest herd of around 30 cows. If this predator kept targeting his animals, it might drive him straight into bankruptcy. The trek southward wound me through some of Virginia's most stunning terrain. Dense mountain laurel blanketed the hillsides, and the stream gurgled icy and transparent across polished rocks. I'd taken my 10-year-old girl Sarah here only the previous weekend. She got a kick out of skipping stones while I monitored the trout numbers. Those quiet family times were often the only thing anchoring my sanity amid the chaos. Henderson was waiting for me by the boundary fence. His face was ashen, clutching his hat tightly, as if he'd witnessed something truly disturbing. This isn't right, Marcus. Quote 158 __. How soon did you discover her? Quote 159. Early this morning, about 6 a.m. She was perfectly healthy when I rounded up the cattle at dusk yesterday. Quote 160. Marcus, you positive on those dimensions? Quote 161. Absolutely. Photos and molds are ready. Quote 162. Jenny. One more detail. The cattle attack was far too precise. No signs of a fight. The cow had 0 defensive injuries. This thing targeted the perfect spot to strike. Quote 163 I'll head your way this afternoon. Stay clear if it shows up. A beast that big could snap your neck effortlessly. The rest of the morning, I traced the stream northward, searching for additional clues. The entity had clearly waded through, yet the stones below erased any trail. Roughly a mile beyond base camp, I stumbled on a discovery that halted me in my tracks. In a cluster of pines there stood a structure, not crafted by people. It resembled a raw cave fused with a basic lean-to. Timbers had been hauled over and stacked deliberately. Thinner limbs interlaced the gaps for barriers. The opening pointed toward the water, ideal for monitoring the flow. Venturing inside triggered my old Vietnam instincts on high alert. Items gathered from the woods and farther afield lay there. Knives for hunting, sorted by length. A service radio reported stolen just weeks ago. Bits of outdoor equipment, pristinely arranged as if displayed like prizes. What truly unnerved me, though, were the bones. They formed deliberate designs across the ground, from deer, cattle, and unknowns. Several bore etchings from rough implements honed to sharp tips and blades. This went beyond mere instinct in wildlife. Intelligence was crafting arms here. I retreated from the structure cautiously, weapon at the ready. The resident possessed smarts, restraint, and means to human implements. That mix terrified me beyond any grisly encounter. Jenny pulled up that afternoon, her vehicle loaded with gear. Compact and resilient, she sported a tight gray ponytail and gaze that caught every detail. We'd tackled 3 bear incidents side by side before, so her insights were solid gold. "Lay it all out for me," she demanded right away. We trekked to the attack location initially. With clinical focus, she inspected the bovine remains, swabbing and gauging. She lingered over the wound shapes, frowning now and then. "The dental impressions match a hefty black bear," she concluded at last. "But the method doesn't fit. Bears overwhelm through brute force. This one calculated the fatal spot. Marcus, take me to that hideout you spotted. Unbelievable. The craftsmanship, the order, the hoarding. Bears never manage this. Even many apes lack such forethought. Metal implements did these scores. Probably your lost blades." "That sure as hell wasn't a bear," she murmured. "No, it wasn't. So, what in God's name was it?" I had no response. Yet as we trudged back to the vehicles under the beam of our flashlights, those sharp, knowing eyes lingered in my mind. Whatever dwelled in these ridges possessed a grasp of people, perhaps deeper than our own self-awareness. And it was growing fearless. Come morning, Henderson phoned with news of yet another slain cow. This one had been snatched from a field barely a quarter mile from his home. The slaughter mirrored the initial one, clean, methodical, almost clinical. But now the beast had delivered a warning. Etched across the cow's side lay a dozen rocks, meticulously arranged in a flawless coil. All were uniformly sized, clearly chosen, and set with deliberate precision. At the spiral's heart sat one of Henderson's hunting blades, plunged firmly into the earth. Jenny scrutinized the setup for a full hour, snapping pictures and jotting down dimensions from all sides. "It's trying to tell us something. Underscore, underscore, quote, underscore, 175, underscore, underscore, underscore. This design holds significance. Underscore, underscore. Quote, underscore, 176, underscore, underscore, underscore. What sort of significance? Underscore, underscore. Quote, underscore. 177, underscore, underscore, underscore. I'm not sure. But clearly it's demonstrating that it can strike wherever it pleases, even right near where folks live. It emerged from the trees like a person, but enormous, fur-shrouded, striding upright as if it ruled everything. Tell us what came after, Tommy. It headed right for Mr. Cooper's bull. That beast gotta be 1,500 pounds of pure venom, but it didn't budge as the thing drew close. Tommy gulped. Then it extended a paw and laid it on the bull's brow, like soothing a child. This goes beyond predation. It's enacting a ceremony of sorts. The idea sent chills racing over me. Ceremony implied belief, and belief demanded an intellect geared for complex ideas. No longer could we dismiss this as mere wildlife, regardless of its form. Later that day, I trekked alone to the stream side, lean-to, eager for clues into the entity's ways. The revelation there upended it all. The structure had grown, with sturdier barriers and finer build quality. Within lay a workbench any artisan would envy. The pilfered blades had shaped implements from antler and timber, arrow tips, lance heads. rudimentary hatchets, each bearing craftsmanship and foresight no beast could claim. Yet the true horror was the stack of snapshots, surveillance shots of the surrounding terrain, captured across weeks or longer, views of Henderson's spread, Cooper's spread, even the outpost where I clocked in. Several captured me in my routine tasks, oblivious to the scrutiny. Beneath them all was an image that iced my veins. My girl, Sarah, snapped just last weekend on our outing to the stream. There she was, tossing pebbles, while I tested the flow farther along, utterly exposed. The creature was aware of Sarah. It had tracked us, mapped our rhythms, possibly weighing if she posed danger or value. I buzzed Jenny on the radio right away. "We've got to stop it this evening. Marcus, we haven't a clue what this is. A freak bear? Some freakish crossbreed? Who knows?" It snapped photos of my kid, Jenny. "It's been tailing her. How should we proceed?" "Whitmore, James, aid me. No mastery over it." "James, what befell you? What sort of therapy was involved? Gene therapy experiment, how many like you exist? Those farm animal attacks, you strive to behave as people, but the bear side surges uncontrollably at key moments." Quote 197, "We pose a threat." Quote 198, "Full Moon Eve." No holding back. Quote 199, "The inhibitors stored at your former facility," Jenny went on. "Precision dosing is essential, and delivery must occur at the height of the change tomorrow when the bear genes peak." Her implication hit me squarely. One of us would need to approach within striking distance to deliver what could prove a deadly injection to 5 rampaging hybrids lost in primal rage. "One more detail," Whitmore added, his tone devolving further toward the wild. "More are en route, military. They seek to dissect us." A chill seized me. Should news of Whitmore's mutation have leaked, capture squads would descend. The federal initiative that bankrolled his work wouldn't tolerate such variables prowling Virginia's woodlands. We might have just a day before troops swarmed, viewing his crew as assets to harness or dangers to eradicate. "Count on our support," I declared at last, "but total faith in us is required." And if the countermeasure failed, Whitmore locked gazes with mine and inclined his head. He knew I'd end it for him and the others if redemption proved impossible. That was the sole method to safeguard ordinary folks from the horrors they could turn into. As the first light of day appeared, our strategy unfolded like utter madness. Jenny headed back to the settlement to collect the required chemicals and gear for the antidote. Meanwhile, I'd remain with Whitmore's team, doing my best to soothe them and keep them concealed until we could deliver the remedy. Yet observing Whitmore battle to hold on to his humanity as his form kept warping horrifically, I couldn't shake the fear that we'd arrived past the point of no return. The full moon ascended, unleashing the monster that James Whitmore was striving so fiercely to suppress. The antidote needed to be given precisely at the height of the shift, when the afflicted were at their most ursine, yet prior to the alteration, locking in permanently. Jenny figured that critical interval lasted about 2 hours post-moonrise. We positioned ourselves in a glade by the stream, placing Whitmore and his 4 associates in a loose ring. As the lunar orb rose further, I witnessed 5 sharp intellects fade into primal instincts. silence, their efforts to communicate like people dissolved into growls and snorts, their precise actions morphed into the lethal prowl of top hunters. Jenny labored feverishly to load 5 syringes with exact measures. An insufficient dose meant certain failure. An excess would end them instantly. She was forced to gauge their masses and vital processes for entities unprecedented in existence. Marcus, they're slipping away. Quote 206, quote, it works. Quote 207, quote, James. Quote 208, quote, Dr. Whitmore, I know you're still there. Allow us to save you. The beast halted, cocking its vast skull. In that instant, a glint of personhood flashed in those shadowy orbs. That brief pause sufficed. Jenny lunged ahead and embedded the syringe firmly in his flank. Whitmore bellowed and whirled on her, but I barreled into him first. We crashed heavily, tumbling through the brush as the antidote clashed with months of altered genes within him. Slowly, his resistance ebbed. The hulking build contracted. The coat pulled back. At the end, I supported a man in his 40s, perhaps 160 pounds, out cold, but with even breaths. Jenny monitored his heartbeat and gave a nod. Signs are steadying. We caught him just right. Over the following 2 hours, we tracked down the other 3 beasts. The antidote succeeded on each, although one, a youthful doctoral candidate, would forever lose full command of his voice. By daybreak, we tended to 5 bewildered, scarred individuals who recalled scant details of their hybrid ordeal. Whitmore regained clarity quickest, assisting in the obliteration of his work's traces. No soul must learn of our findings, he declared while we torched his records. The urge to militarize it would prove overwhelming. I concurred without reservation. We'd witnessed the peril of merging cerebral acuity with savage drives. It birthed a threat, surpassing both origins. We logged the event as a triumphant pursuit of a marauding bear troop. The attacks on herds ceased. Ranchers found relief. And routine resumed in Jefferson National Forest. Whitmore and his team received fresh starts under altered names elsewhere. The authorities claimed they had been discovered disoriented from hypothermia and amnesia after wandering lost in the wild for 2 full years. I never crossed paths with any of them after that, though I occasionally questioned whether the intervention had truly erased everything. During still evenings amid the trees, I caught myself straining to catch noises that seemed beyond mere wildlife, scanning for footprints that hinted at too much cunning. 3 months on, I put in for a shift to fire tower watch. To my boss, I explained it as a craving for isolation and the calm of scanning for plumes of smoke from a perch high above the canopy. What I kept to myself was how the dense underbrush no longer allowed me restful nights. I'd come to realize the boundary separating man from beast was far more fragile than most would believe. On certain evenings, with the moon at its peak and the woods hushed, I pondered my true place on either side of that divide. Even today, those ridges summon me. Yet I respond from afar, ever vigilant, ever haunted by the gaze of entities that had once walked as people and perhaps could once more. Certain changes, I discovered, etch scars that refuse to fade entirely. I'm Dorothy Silverstone, and for 13 years I've served as a backcountry ranger in Cherokee National Forest. Folks know me as Dot. Many assume ranger life is all about perching in a lookout scanning for blazes. Winter patrols, though, tell a different tale. When fierce snowstorms sweep these peaks, it's my job to venture out and locate those trapped by the weather. I honed my search and rescue skills on Colorado ski runs before heading to Tennessee. In those days, I was determined to show that a woman could match any man in the field. Guess I'm still at it. As the trailblazing female ranger in these parts, every slip-up draws double the scrutiny. That February morning unfolded like a typical cold season shift. Janet brewed the coffee as I inspected my equipment. We'd been partners for 3 years, but our relationship stayed hidden from colleagues. In 1973, admitting to loving another woman wasn't wise, particularly in a role where some men already doubted my fit. "Radio's warning the blizzard's intensifying," Janet noted, passing me the hot mug. Outside our cabin, flakes were already whipping down fiercely. I brushed a kiss on her cheek. "Nothing out of the ordinary for a Tuesday up here." The alert buzzed in just past midday. A pair of hikers from a 3-day trek on Rand Mountain hadn't come back. A young couple, fresh from their wedding in Atlanta, figuring winter was ideal for a secluded honeymoon. What started as rough weather had escalated into a raging nor'easter by nightfall, with gusts up to 60 miles per hour and temps plunging to 15 below zero. My boss, Bill Henderson, a solid sort who'd backed me when others hesitated, eyed me closely. "You certain about soloing this, Dot?" "We could hold off till the gale eases." "Those two are out there turning to ice as we speak," I replied, stuffing my emergency kit. "Delaying just stacks the odds against them." He gave a curt nod. Bill knew full well that hesitation spelled doom in such gales. At the trail start, I fastened my snowshoes. The blasts were so vicious I struggled to stay upright. Horizontal drifts blinded me to anything beyond arm's reach. My compass was meant to guide north to Rand Mountain, yet its dial whirled wildly. "Blame the tempest," I grumbled under my breath, despite never witnessing a squall disrupt one like that. The path had vanished beneath 3 feet of powder. Relying on instinct and the terrain's tilt, I pressed on, jabbing my ice axe to test for concealed stones or snags. The gale produced an eerie howl unlike any I'd known, like distant chants in an unfamiliar tongue. 2 hours into the ascent, I spotted their initial cast-off. A blue knapsack, partially entombed but propped straight up as if deliberately set. Nearby, lesser belongings formed a precise ring. A canteen, positioned so, mittens offset just right, all symmetrically arrayed. No panicked trekker scatters items that way. In desperation, they shed and flee onward. I grabbed the pack, rifling through it. Supplies remained intact. Rations, spare layers, their camera too. What sense did it make to ditch a lifeline stocked for endurance amid the freeze? The breeze surged once more, and I could have sworn melodies drifted on it. Not the typical whistle of air through branches, but genuine voices, several, blending in unison, though the flurry hid any figures. My radio hissed to life. I keyed for bass, but only crackles came, laced with rhythmic thuds like distant beats. That's when the impossible caught my eye. Snowfall reversing direction. Briefly, in a patch roughly 10 feet across, Crystals ascended rather than descended, twisting in a vortex skyward, drawn by unseen forces. I rubbed my eyes and peered anew. Everything settled as usual. Gale's messing with my head. Quote 219. Quote, come on, quote 220, quote, hey, quote 221, quote. You okay? Quote 222, quote. She's utterly stunning, he murmured. Hear her melody. His partner inclined her head in agreement. We'll twirl with her through the eternal flakes without end. We have to descend from here, ma'am, I hailed. You okay out here? Her chant ceased, and she fixed her stare on me. Her eyes gleamed entirely milky, cataract-like, yet conveyed flawless perception. She extended a palm toward the couple. The air plunged a full 20 degrees right then. A sheath of ice snapped across my coat with audible pops. The duo rose as one, grips unbroken, and advanced on the figure. Halt! I yelled to no effect. They advanced over the powdery expanse as if on pavement. Soles, barely dipping. I lunged after them, but the drifts deepened with every stride. Before long, I waded through mounds reaching my hips while they glided effortlessly atop. The robed woman resumed her tune. Now, fragments of it pierced my thoughts, not via any knowledge of Cherokee, but as direct impressions blooming in my head. Return, wandering young ones. Return to the peaks. Join the whirl in the unending frost. The pair arrived and clasped her palms. The trio ignited in that luminous sheen, like reflected moonlight. Then they pivoted and headed for the precipice's brink, where the drop plunged into shadow. No! I cried out, thrashing forward through the barrier, but the gap was too vast. They crossed the ledge and dissolved from sight. I clawed my way to the rim and peered over. Sheer stone, glazed in frost, met my view. There were no mangled remains below, no trace that they'd ever been real. Yet their song lingered in my ears, echoing faintly from the blizzard's depths. I lingered by the precipice for a full 10 minutes, sweeping my beam into the void and shouting their names into the gale. Silence answered. The gusts had eased, leaving just the rasp of my breath in the hush. Then my radio hissed awake. Dot, base camp here. Where are you at? My frozen hands groped for the device. Bill, I've located them. The lost hikers. But things feel off up top. Seriously off. Give me your update. Hurt bad? How could I describe two folks strolling off a sheer drop and simply evaporating? How to confess to my supervisor that a lady in old Cherokee garb had lured them with her melody. I need support. And perhaps a Cherokee speaker. The line buzzed with interference for what seemed forever. Cherokee? Dot. You holding up? That doesn't track. There's another presence here. An older Cherokee lady. Sounds like she might be in a bind as well. Negative, Dot. Scans put you solo on that peak. You're isolated up there. I scanned the surroundings. The ridgeline stood barren now, save for me and the deserted shelter down the slope. Those odd tracks had vanished under new powder. Even the gear's peculiar circle lay disrupted by the breeze. But I'd witnessed her. All three of them. Dot, you've endured brutal exposure for 4 hours straight. That can spark delusions from the chill. Head downhill now, that's an order. He might have had a point. The freeze could be messing with my head. Still, I trusted my eyes. I trudged back to the hiker's site to collect proof. If they'd truly vanished, their belongings would serve as evidence. Unzipping the flap revealed them nestled within, The couple lay bundled in sleep sacks, hoods drawn tight, lids shut. They seemed serene, lost in sweet slumbers. "Thank heavens," I murmured, slipping inside. "I figured you were—" I extended a hand to nudge the guy's arm, but it passed straight through. They were present yet absent, like figures glimpsed through rippling waves. Visible, in sharp detail, but contact met only icy nothingness. Simultaneously, their eyes fluttered open, and they grinned at me. "She's eyeing you now. Quote 233, quote, the Winter Witch. She's lingered ages for one like you." "One tied to these heights," the man chimed in. "Who grasps the freeze?" Their shapes dissolved gradually, akin to thawing frost. She seeks a fresh protector. Ancient customs fade, yet the peak holds its recollections. "What customs?" I demanded. But they'd evaporated. The space held only their equipment, now etched with that eerie, icy script. I snapped shots using their camera, but each frame washed out to pure blankness. Scooping up their packs, I began the descent. The tempest intensified, and my grip on reality wavered, yet after barely 100 yards, a voice summoned me. Dorothy, not the shortened dot from colleagues, uttered the classic way, echoing my grandma's inflection. I wheeled about. The Cherokee elder stood mere steps away, within arm's reach. Nearer, her beauty shone through the years, her features smooth yet timeless, as if hewn from the range's granite. "This storm's no place for you," quote 237, quote, "Come on, I'll guide you to cover." Her lips curved. "I embody the refuge. I summon the squall. I carry the highlands' winter lore. It doesn't add up. Your folk invaded our holy grounds, felled the ancient groves, paved paths where none belonged. They ignored the range's soul. Air currents whipped around us. Oddly, warmth bloomed in me rather than frostbite. I attempted subtle cautions, shifted their tools, sowed unease, but intruders persisted. Thus, I invoked the season's fury to repel them. The wanderers are secure. They revel among winter's phantoms. No chill assails them. No famine reaches. She advanced. "You might unite with them, Dorothy. Few comprehend these slopes like you." My existence replayed, 13 years clawing validation from doubters who deemed me unfit, battling for esteem that eluded me, returning drained to Janet, her frets mounting with each risky shift. The Winter Witch extended her palm. "End the battles. Cease proving your value. Embrace tranquility, the range, the drifts, the unending whirl." Briefly, her grasp tempted me. No crude barbs, no perilous extractions, merely hush and hoarfrost. Then Janet's visage surfaced. She'd await my return, stirring stew, anxious over the weather. My vanishing would leave her in torment, unexplained. "I won't," I declared. "Someone relies on me." The Winter Witch's visage shifted. Gentleness fled, yielding to an ageless wrath. "Then you'll learn the cost of turning away from the mountain's offerings." She lifted her arms, and the tempest erupted around us with a rage beyond anything I'd ever known. Gale-force winds hit me like a solid punch, hurling me to the ground. Snow morphed into sharp ice shards that pelted like gunfire. The cold plunged so abruptly that my exhales froze into icy shards right as they escaped. Visibility vanished in a wall of white. All I could make out was the howling gale's roar. My compass whirled chaotically, and the GPS display flashed absurd coordinates from distant continents. Yet deep down, I sensed the precise direction to head. The blizzard pursued me off the peak like a sentient beast. Whenever I believed I'd outrun it, fresh gusts battered me from unexpected angles. Drifts accumulated at an unnatural pace, climbing to my knees in mere moments. I was perhaps a mile from the trailhead when I crashed through the ice over a creek that had no business being locked in such a deep freeze. Beneath, the current rushed upstream against all logic. I dragged myself free, drenched and shivering, only to notice my garments repelled the moisture. That's when it hit me. This went far beyond mere meteorology. This force was ancient, far mightier than any squall. I'd grown up with those tales, Cherokee myths of the Nunnehi, ethereal beings dwelling in the highlands. My mom's side had partial Cherokee roots, even if Graham rarely dwelled on it. Once, though, she'd shared that the peaks were sentient, and certain spots too hallowed for everyday folk. You should have heeded those tales, child. The winter witch emerged from the swirling flakes, striding alongside me as if we were acquaintances out for a leisurely hike. She appeared transformed now, more youthful, more robust, energy sparking off her like static. Graham shared those legends with me, I replied, battling onward through the heavy powder. But I figured they were mere fables. Legends safeguard our truths, alerting the young to perils they haven't encountered. Her words cut through the gale without effort. I served as a healer when the troops arrived to herd us westward. This peak held deep holiness for my kin. We'd conducted rituals here for a millennium. I pressed on, but I was attuned. When they compelled our exodus, I refused to go. I let my flesh perish in the drifts instead of forsaking these holy sites. The mountain embraced my essence as its sentinel. That was more than a century back. The mountain ignores time, but it resents alteration. Your kind has lost the art of honoring untamed realms. They believe they can erect structures everywhere, seize whatever they desire, claim what's inherently unclaimable. We arrived at a familiar open space, the spot a developer had eyed for a ski lodge. They'd felled timber and dynamited chunks of the escarpment until conservationists halted them via legal action. I'd backed those activists silently, given my position. This marks the origin. The Winter Witch explained they'd unearthed the cemetery holding my ancestors' remains. They dispersed those revered relics like refuse. That's when I unleashed the genuine winter. In the glade, they appeared. Scores of ghostly forms clad in Cherokee garb, swirling through the flakes in a dance. Men, women, kids, all the souls who'd perished safeguarding this height or been exiled from it. "They're stunning," I murmured. "Become one of us, Dorothy. You've devoted your existence to carving space in a society that rejects you. In our realm, you'd earn reverence. Here, your resilience would matter." Janet crossed my mind once more. Our subdued existence, shielded from prying eyes. The occasions I'd held back retorts to the guy's barbs about female rangers. The ongoing struggles ahead. And the folks below? Those who will succumb to frost if this gale intensifies. They selected their course by violating hallowed earth. Let them endure the fallout. Yet certain ones resisted. Certain ones battled to defend this terrain. The Winter Witch halted. "You reason like my forebears. The virtuous and the vile intertwined, not solely the vile. I reason as one schooled in nuance. The world defies simplicity. Retributing all for a few's misdeeds, that's no equity." She fell silent for an extended beat, scrutinizing my features. You'd debate equity with phantoms. I'd debate equity with anybody. That's my essence. At last, she offered a sincere grin. Not the awe-inspiring yet fearsome one from before. Maybe. Maybe an alternate path exists. Share it. My kin's skeletons need reinterment in consecrated soil. The peak requires shielding from profiteers intent on scarring it. And a watch must be kept. By one versed in dual realms. You mean myself? I mean one who champions righteousness despite hardship. One who safeguards wild expanses knowing their worth. She met my gaze squarely. I've guarded for 150 years. I'm weary, child. The times have shifted. And an ancient entity like me can't safeguard modern threats with outdated methods. The swirling apparitions had halted their movements, observing us intently. Their expressions blended optimism with sorrow. Should I accept this role? What becomes of my existence? Of Janet? You'll stay true to who you are. You'll carry on with your mortal days. Yet whenever the peaks face danger, whenever the hallowed grounds require defense, you'll heed the summons. The season of frost will heed your commands. The ridge will communicate with you. And once your earthly days conclude, you'll decide if you'll linger as protector or proceed to whatever lies ahead. This wasn't the outcome I'd anticipated. Not demise, but duty. Not evasion, but meaning. And suddenly the tempest ceased. The tempest ceased. Those down in the valley survived. But honor your vow, Dorothy Silverstone. The ridge will not forget. I extended my palm. Her touch resembled chilled crystal, yet tangible. I vow it. The gale perished the instant our palms met. One instant I was engulfed in roaring gusts and pelting flakes, and the next, I stood in utter quiet beneath a sky ablaze with stars. The chill lingered, but it was ordinary wintry chill. Not the otherworldly lethal freeze I'd battled for hours. The frost sorceress and the twirling phantoms dissolved like vapor, though not without her final words. Heed the tales, offspring, and weave fresh ones. I reached the trail's start right as the search party pulled up. Bill Henderson glanced at me and draped an urgent wrap around my shoulders. Christ, Dot, we figured you were gone. The monitoring post reported that squall surged from nothing and vanished equally swift. Nothing like it on record. Spot the wanderers? I inquired. He scowled. Which wanderers? No alerts for missing folks. The following hour, I labored to persuade him I'd been hunting a pair of misplaced honeymooners, but no traces existed of them. No permits for camps, no alerts for the vanished, no deserted vehicle at the path's base. To all others, I'd ascended solo to inspect the climate gauges. Janet awaited my return home exactly as I'd foreseen. She brewed warm cocoa and held back from probing too deeply about my ghostly pallor. That evening, visions of Cherokee phantoms whirling amid the flakes filled my sleep. Upon rising, fragments of an unfamiliar tongue lingered in my mind, along with insights about the ridge no lessons had imparted. In the ensuing months, I delved into archives. I uncovered the desecrated graveyard, the coerced exile of Cherokee from their heritage grounds, the holy spots razed by expansion. Visitors began appearing too. Eco-attorneys seeking validated backing for court fights. Journalists probing unlawful waste in the woods. Indigenous seniors eager to recount spoken legacies of the venerated sites. They all seemed drawn to me inexplicably, and occasionally, when builders, hunters, or those intent on wounding the ridge attempted tasks during the cold season, the elements turned uncooperative. Abrupt snow blasts from sunny heavens, targeted glaze assaults on pinpoint areas. Machinery locked in ice through nights too mild for such binds. I never glimpsed the frost enchantress anew, yet her essence lingered, revealing that certain narratives demand patience. Some realities await the fitting hour, the suitable soul, the precise instant when audiences are prepared to hear. This tale qualifies as such. I'm pensioned off these days. Janet and I dwell in a modest cabin bordering Cherokee National Forest, with vistas of the peaks from our cooking nook. We're forthright about our bond nowadays. Society evolved sufficiently to permit it in time, though summons still reach me when trekkers vanish in the freeze. When constructors eye forbidden zones. When the ridge requires one who recalls the ancient pacts and snowy oaths, for certain duties persist beyond stepping away. And on the harshest frosty evenings, when flakes drift ideally and breezes hum like melody, recollections of leaping shades and timeless oaths return. I recall that certain locales hold sanctity, and that a sentinel must always endure. My name is Samuel Ironwood, and I've served as a park ranger for 19 years. Prior to that, I embodied something I regret deeply, a strip mining specialist. For 12 years, I demolished peaks and tainted waterways, all for inexpensive fuel. Remorse gnawed at me daily until it overwhelmed me. That's what led me to the George Washington National Forest in West Virginia, attempting to mend the wreckage wrought by folks like my former self. My current role involves ecological renewal. I sample waters, examine earth, and gradually revive barren terrain. It can't erase my past actions, but it counts for progress. The separation decree finalized last month. My boy Jake, now 16, remains silent toward me. My son discovered my past career while digging into a school assignment on ecological harm. Spotting his dad's name in those old mining documents pretty much shattered whatever bond we had left. I can't fault him for it. It all shifted in October 1982. I was stationed at Coal Hollow, among the most devastated areas I'd encountered. 2 decades earlier, Blackstone Mining Company had ravaged 3 entire mountains in that spot. What remained was a barren expanse resembling the Martian terrain, scarlet soil, toxic waterways, and miles without a hint of life. The acid mine drainage peaked during that season. Every dawn, a hazy, yellowish-green mist drifted through the valleys, dense enough to choke you. The odor was overpowering, a mix of sulfur, metals, and an irritant that clawed at your throat. I never skipped my respirator. Yet that foulness seeped in regardless. Folks avoided Coal Hollow whenever possible. The community understood the risks. Even the state road veered wide, as if the engineers themselves recoiled from nearing it. No signal for cell phones out there either. Trouble in that isolation meant handling it solo. That's what had me on edge when Dr. Rachel Martinez failed to return. Rachel, a university expert in water analysis, grasped chemistry like no one else. She was collecting specimens from the polluted creeks, aiming to pinpoint the legacy of Blackstone's operations. We'd collaborated for 3 months, and she was meticulous about precautions and protocols. She was due back by midday on October 15th. By 5 p.m., with no sign, I sensed disaster. I packed my truck. Survival supplies, medical kit, cords, lanterns, backup hydration. My monitoring tools as well, Geiger counter, pH soil analyzer, vapor sensor. In a hellhole like Coal Hollow, hazards could lurk in any form. The journey took 40 minutes over rutted tracks barely fit for vehicles, more goat trail than road. Blackstone had laid them for their hulking rigs, but relentless acidic downpours had churned the stones into a gritty sludge. My vehicle jolted and swayed through depressions deep enough to engulf a compact auto. Venturing further in, the scenery deteriorated. Stripped slopes extended everywhere, etched with steps from the old machinery. Twisted scrap metal protruded from the earth like shattered limbs. The creek paralleling the path glowed vivid orange from iron deposits in the runoff. No creature could survive such lethal liquid. I located Rachel's Jeep by the derelict conveyor span. Her gear sat untouched on the front seat, but she was missing. I shouted her name. Only the echoes off the lifeless ridges replied. Then came the first oddity. The orange flow had gone pitch black, not dirt-tinged, but glossy like crude oil, and it defied gravity, surging upward in spots. That's not how water behaves. It simply can't. I scanned with my devices. The Geiger was ticking at an elevated rate. The pH test indicated acidity fierce enough to eat through my gear. Yet the gas sensor revealed the real anomaly. Traces of substances that shouldn't be there at all. As dusk fell, a noise chilled me to the core. From afar, engines were humming, heavy ones, the sort Blackstone deployed to devastate peaks. But the company had vanished 20 years prior. I pursued the racket further into the ravine, my beam slicing the encroaching shadows. The clamor intensified. A steady churn and rasp I recognized intimately. It echoed a dragline excavator, a colossal contraption capable of reshaping hills bite by bite. My footsteps ground against soil that felt off. After all those years, it ought to have hardened. But instead, it yielded like new rubble. The Geiger in my grip was frantic, its clicks blurring into a buzz. Rounding a curve in the track, there it loomed. Blackstone's ancient drag line, Unit 4047, right where it was left to rust 2 decades back. Only now, it stirred. The enormous arm swung lazily, the scoop arcing with purpose. Thick diesel fumes belched from the exhaust, dark clouds that shimmered under my light. This defied reason. No power source, no pilot. Most wiring had long been looted for parts. Still, it operated as if plunged back to 1962. I edged nearer, hunkered behind a mound of discarded slag. Peering through the cab's filth-streaked glass, I made out the controls. A shape occupied the seat, not a person. It was elongated, unnaturally lanky. Its gestures were spasmodic, puppet-like. As it swiveled to face me, hollow orbits stared from a visage woven of darkness more than substance. That's how I discovered Rachel. She lay trapped in the excavator's scoop, dangling 50 feet in the air. What I witnessed next twisted my gut into knots. Rachel wasn't merely deceased. She'd been liquefied. Her garments remained whole, yet the contents had melted into a viscous black ooze, seeping through the bucket's metal grating. The entity in the control booth pivoted toward me once more. As it parted its jaws, A voice emerged like the screech of rusted gears. "This is your creation," it rasped. "You sketched the blueprints." I bolted. My pickup coughed to life on the third attempt, and I barreled down those twisting mountain paths quicker than any sane driver would in pitch blackness. In my rear view, the dragline's motor roared closer. Glancing back, I caught sight of the impossible. The colossal digger was pursuing me. This 200-ton behemoth was barreling along a gravel track at freeway velocities, its treads pulverizing whatever lay ahead. The arm oscillated wildly like a serpent's tail, and amid the scoop, Rachel's liquefied form churned like broth. I slammed the accelerator. My vehicle burst from the valley, hitting 60 miles per hour on lanes built for half that. Yet regardless of my speed, the excavator matched it effortlessly. Once I merged onto the primary road and pushed the engine to its limits, the beast simply disappeared. It filled my mirrors one instant, then nothing the next. I headed directly to the station in Beckley. Sheriff Tommy Morrison and I went way back to my early days patrolling these woods. He heard me out with the calm demeanor of a man accustomed to wild yarns from isolation-crazed forest dwellers. "Sam," he said at the end, "you haven't touched a drink. On any pills? Isolation can play hell with the mind. Ever hear of thorium-251, Tommy? 'Cause my gears register in a haze of it over Coal Hollow. Might be a glitch. Maybe. But Dr. Martinez is still unaccounted for. And I located her vehicle. You built this. You drew the plans. Treads don't match," Deputy Martinez informed me afterward. "No kin to the doctor, merely an ill-timed namesake. Soil's torn up, no doubt, but the patterns loop around, like it was idling in place. ___, quote _249, ___ positive. That's what happened, Morrison probed. Doubt clouded everything now. Under sunlight, surrounded by rational folks, my account rang like madness. Still, I trusted my eyes, and I knew Rachel was gone. I'd like to stick around, poke further, ___, quote _251, ___, might have overlooked details in the night. He wasn't thrilled, but lacked grounds to refuse. Federal territory, and I held the badge. Once his crew departed, solitude returned to Coal Hollow. That's when the nightmare deepened. I began at Rachel's final sampling spot, the disused filtration basin. It spanned roughly a football pitch, brimming with 2 decades' worth of chemical muck. The brew was so lethal it emitted a subtle emerald shimmer even in full sun. My tools freaked out on approach. The Geiger clicked frantically like a fire alert. The acidity probe hit extremes that'd corrode metal, and the gas unit lit up with those phantom isotopes anew: thorium-251, uranium-340, an entity dubbed element-126 that had no business existing here. Oddest of all was the noise, a low mechanical drone teasing the threshold of perception. It rose from below, as if vast mechanisms labored far underground. While snapping photos of the toxic muck, I caught the sound of voices. Men's voices barking commands with the heavy drawl of Appalachian coal diggers. "Keep that line steady! Ease her over on the gas!" Yet no one was in sight. Only me, the contaminated pool, and the barren slopes. That's when they materialized. Spectral shapes in helmets and work overalls, maneuvering gear that shimmered on the brink of reality. They resembled the workers from those vintage Blackstone safety posters, the victims of tunnel collapses, gear malfunctions, and toxic blasts. These apparitions were running invisible rigs, repeating the exact drills from their living days. One locked eyes with me. His features were scorched off, likely from the 1967 acid leak that ended him. His words resonated straight in my skull. "You doomed us, engineer. Your skimps, your penny pinching, your falsified safety logs." I attempted to bolt, but my legs were rooted like in wet cement. Additional phantoms emerged, all 23 souls lost due to my choices. They closed in, their scarred and mangled visages radiating 2 decades of rage. "Time to settle up," they intoned together. The earth underfoot began to tremble. Fissures snaked outward like fractured glass. Vile ooze surged from the splits, sizzling and steaming. The spectral crew cackled, their mirth like clashing metal. Then the drag line fired up once more. Unit 447 thundered into motion, 50 yards off. Except now it wasn't alone. 3 machines in total, the full lineup of earth movers that had torn up this ground. Graders, haulers, belt feeders, each piloted by vengeful corpses. I wrenched loose from the unseen grip and dashed toward my vehicle. In pursuit, the hardware ignited, rumbling diesels and whining pistons. But these weren't ordinary rigs any longer. They accelerated unnaturally, pivoted with eerie precision. The excavator's scoop hurtled toward me like a demolition sphere, grazing my scalp by mere inches. My engine turned over instantly, a rare stroke of luck. As I sped for the gate, a grader blocked my path. It pulsed with that same eerie emerald glow as the waste pool. Its plow lowered, poised to shove me into the lethal runoff. I jerked the steering sharp to starboard and veered into the rough, jolting across boulders and rubble. Through the rear view, the whole fleet trailed me, a convoy of ethereal iron driven by the deceased. They hounded me right to Coal Hollow's rim. Then, as earlier, they dissolved. This round, though, the truth hit me. The contamination had evolved beyond mere toxins. 2 decades of venom seeping into soil stained by 23 brutal ends had birthed an abomination, thriving on remorse and intensifying annually. Coal Hollow was now a festering scar on existence, ravenous for more. I devoted 3 days to digging through every scrap on Coal Hollow. Vintage dig logs, hazard audits, fatality files. Each page deepened my nausea. Not one loss was inevitable. The 1965 collapse. I'd pushed for slimmer braces to cut costs. The 1967 toxin dump, I'd sketched a flawed barrier setup. The 1969 gear mishap claiming 5 lives, I'd signed off on skimpy upkeep, 23 fatalities. All traceable to my signatures. The presence in Coal Hollow wasn't mere hauntings. It was my accumulated shame taking form. The tainted earth, the slain diggers, the corroded hardware, they'd merged into a force-craving reckoning. And Rachel was just the start. On day 4, Sheriff Morrison rang. "Sam, we're in deep. That haze from Coal Hollow, it's creeping out. Hit Miller's Creek at dawn, wiped out the fish, and felled 3 youngsters from the fumes alone. You've returned," it declared in 23 overlapping tones. "I've come to negotiate. No bargains, only retribution. Hear me out. This setup uses thermite, military-grade stuff, fierce enough to liquefy metal. If I trigger it, I'll go down too. But it'll block the primary toxin vein. Starve you of your energy. Quote underscore 262 underscore mend it, they urged. And then they vanished. The thermite was genuine, though I didn't need to ignite it. The force-haunting Coal Hollow appeared content with my resolve to perish for my sins. Come dawn, the chemical haze had lifted. The waterways flowed rusty rather than inky. The radiation detector registered safe levels. Securing federal Superfund designation for Coal Hollow demanded 6 months of paperwork, testimonies, and clashes with officials reluctant to fund a wasteland. But I possessed leverage they couldn't dismiss. Rachel's concluding analysis fused with my technical expertise. It sketched a grim scenario of ecological ruin endangering the whole basin. The restoration spanned 5 years, 5 years of my existence devoted to dismantling 2 decades of ruin. We excavated masses of polluted dirt, treated the acidic runoff, and restored local flora. It fell short. It always would. Still, it marked a beginning. My boy Jake visited the revitalized site just last month. He's away at university these days, majoring in ecology. He hasn't pardoned my past actions, but he grasps the reason I've poured the past 5 years into repairs. Are they resting easy now? He wondered, gazing across the reborn Coal Hollow. Lush greenery blanketed it, with pure waters and saplings thriving. I reflected on those 23 miners, on Rachel, on the countless others scarred by ventures like Blackstone. I hope they are, I replied, though I'll never know for certain, because in the dead of night, when gusts whisper through the valley, I occasionally catch the hum of engines. No longer hostile, merely vigilant, overseeing that I honor my word. Coal Hollow stands purified today, but its memory endures. Mine does too. Each dawn as I rise, I dwell on the decisions of my early engineering days. I ponder the workers who perished from my shortcuts, the terrains I ravaged for gain. I recall Rachel Martinez, who lost her life unraveling my blunders, and each day I strive to improve. The shame lingers. Perhaps it's meant to. Perhaps that's redemption's toll. Bearing the burden of your errors eternally and channeling that load to forge something stronger. At 51, with silver threading my beard and indelible marks on my palms from 2 decades of earth testing, I'll likely devote my remaining professional days to remediating spots like Coal Hollow, zones where former versions of myself bartered human lives for wealth. It's insufficient. It will always be. But it counts for something. And in those serene instants, when breezes bear the murmur of vital currents and budding forests, I believe that's the most we can achieve. Repair what's possible, honor what's irreparable, and ensure the specters of our failings stay buried. Coal Hollow lies serene these days. I pray it remains so.